You might have heard of dopamine before. This neurotransmitter that's released in your brain when you eat something delicious or receive a notification that someone liked your post on social media or get a text from your crush. But did you know that it has a huge influence on your life? And not just your mood or how often you check your phone, but everything from your memory to your ability to feel pain. I'm here to tell you all about dopamine and why it's such a big deal. Dopamine is made in the brain from the amino acid tyrosine, which comes from food like bananas and avocados. Once it's released into the synapse, the space between neurons, it can bind two receptors on the receiving neuron and send signals throughout the brain. Signals that can affect a lot of important functions. For example, dopamine is an important part of the reward pathway, which influences how we remember things. When you learn something new, dopamine helps cement that memory so you remember it better next time. That's why studying with flashcards works so well. You get a little dopamine hit every time you get a fact right, which helps you remember what you've learned. But dopamine does way more than that. It also helps regulate our pain response. Researchers used to think that we had a separate system for feeling pain, but now they believe that dopamine actually plays a major role. When people with Parkinson's disease move their limbs, they don't just move stiffly and slowly, they also feel pain. Because dopamine normally helps us ignore background pain. Low levels of dopamine mean that they feel pain more intensely. In fact, dopamine is one of the reasons that exercise feels good. After a good workout, you release tons of dopamine, which helps reduce pain signals in the brain. We still don't understand exactly how dopamine relieves pain, but scientists are hoping to learn more soon. Since dopamine does so much, it's not surprising that too much or too little can cause problems. Too much dopamine can make you impulsive, like when drug addiction hijacks your reward centers and makes you crave the next hit. Too little dopamine can contribute to depression or make it hard to focus on things that require sustained effort. Even our everyday decisions are influenced by dopamine. When you're trying to decide whether to watch another episode of your favorite show or go for a run instead, your dopamine levels will affect your decision. Food that's high in fat and sugar will give you a bigger dopamine hit than food that's less tasty. So if you're trying to stick to a diet, it can be harder to resist a cupcake than a carrot. Knowing how much power dopamine has, you might try to boost it as much as possible. Right? Well, it turns out that can backfire. Our brains adapt to the level of dopamine that we're used to. So, if you artificially increase it with drugs or junk food, your brain can end up making less of it. So, even though a bag of M&Ms might seem like a good idea when you're feeling down, it could make things worse in the long run. And it's not just junk food that can affect dopamine levels. Social media was built to keep us engaged, which means that it can hijack your dopamine system. Every time you open an app, you're flooded with notifications, likes, and comments. All of these things are designed to give you a little dopamine hit, so you stay on the app longer. And because they're so easy to access, they can end up dominating your day. It is kind of ironic that social media affects our dopamine, because it was originally designed to bring us closer together. But using apps too much can actually make you feel worse, both because of the artificial dopamine hit and because you're missing out on real-life experiences. In fact, some studies have linked excessive social media use with depression. That's why it is a good idea to take a break from your phone every once in a while. It might be hard at first, but eventually you'll be able to enjoy the real world again without getting distracted by your phone. Even just a few minutes of unplugged time can help you reset your dopamine system, so you can feel more motivated to do things that are more rewarding in the long run, like spending time with friends or learning something new. If you like feeling accomplished and motivated, then you'll love the next two videos. Click to keep learning.